Welcome back to Worldview Connections, our series on scientism. We left off asking the question, are there limits to only using the methods of science? So you're not taking anything else into account, not philosophy, certain philosophical arguments, or especially what they would call pseudoscience or whatever, towards faith or belief. Some of the big questions that science does not and probably will never reach an answer of. But to show another example illustrating the mindset of scientism, um, there are need there seem to be needless battles between religion and science. And avoiding binary, polarized, and divisive thinking, we look at some of the ways of thinking here. For example, an unfair and biased diagram when you Google up science versus faith or science and faith. You start here. In science, you get an idea, you perform an experiment, and then you ask yourself, does the evidence support the idea? Well, then you have two options, yes or no. If the evidence does not support the idea, then you start over, which is good in science. Scientific method is great. But if the evidence if it does support the idea, then you have a theory created. So the word theory in science is used in a different way than common usage is. But then you have a time of sharing the data, the peer reviews, and the analysis. It's a lot of rigorous work being done in science, and you use the theory to better understand the universe and discover new evidence. And then there's two options. Even then, we see a newer model in science that I think is great. It's saying, no, can the theory be modified to explain the new evidence? No, well then you have to, in a sense, get that idea and reform it, work on it. If yes, then you improve the theory, use this to better understand things. In other words, science is all about gaining that understanding. Great. I for the most part, most people in science would agree with this. But then you look at this view on faith. They get an idea and they ignore contradicting evidence. Now, I will say this is true of some people. Again, I talked about religious dogma, and there are people I do contend against the people who have this unconditional allegiance to an institution, a religious group. I'm talking about this is just one big smear on faith, though. Not all the people with faith do this, though. Again, other videos we have on our channel illustrate great scientists, great philosophers, great thinkers and writers and researchers who are not this. They don't ignore contradicting evidence. So this is just flat out not fair and not true of their worldview. Another example, someone would say, science adjusts its views based on what's observed. Good, yes, good science does. But then there's that definition of faith. It's the denial of observation so that belief can be preserved. I don't think that's a fair or true assessment of all people I know who have faith. They are investigating and using reasoning, what some would call rational faith. So some agree, some disagree with this. It is one thing to celebrate science for its achievements, which we should, and I do, and its remarkable ability to explain a wide variety of phenomena in the natural world. But to claim there is nothing knowable outside the scope of science would be similar to a successful fisherman saying that whatever he can't catch in his nets does not exist. The source I've shared this from is shared at the end of this series, and I think it's a great analogy. You cannot be narrow-minded just within science. That becomes scientism. It becomes a religion in itself. And I think it's just as dangerous as extreme Islam is, and just as destructive on human creativity and intellectualism. Once you accept that science is the only source of human knowledge, you have adopted a philosophical position, which is scientism, that cannot be verified or falsified by science itself, and it is, in a word, ironically, unscientific. So the next video, most likely the last in this series, we're going to go through where do you get your knowledge and truth about life. Leave us a comment in these videos. We're going to be going through different parts of our life and different parts of our cultures where we find truth beyond science and religion in this series on scientism.